Betty and Joan are always talked about in the same breath, even though they only appeared in one picture together, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, is the way that they attacked their roles. They both dove in there with claws and grabbed hold of the material and startled their audiences by the fever of their pitch.
All right, Blanche Hudson, Miss Big Fat Movie Star.
The kinship between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford has to do with the lack of boundaries between who they were and who they played. They wore their lives on their sleeves, so to speak, while they were on screen.
It must have been a lot of fun for the public who knew Davis and Crawford from 30 years of stardom to see them finally paired, and it's kind of like the battle of Godzilla and Rodan. I've heard it said that Bette Davis was the screen's great sadist and Crawford was the screen's great masochist. So it really is a match made in heaven.
And so these two women who were similar in that they were super powerful, ultra-ambitious, fierce divas, are still linked together because of that one film. It's really an amazing example of one film, to quite an extent, defining the image of both women.
Bette Davis used to say that she and Crawford had nothing in common. Now, of course, they actually had a number of things in common. They both were very strong women who had to fight against great odds for their stardom.
Then there's no other way. Not for us.
Joan Crawford's primary ambition was to be a dancer. She appeared in the chorus of several musicals, and it was as a chorus girl that she was discovered by an MGM executive and brought to Hollywood.
You like to dance?
More than anything in the world.
You want to work with me?
Yes, Mr. Gessler.
Jake.
Yes, sir.
Now beat it.
Thank you.
Our Dancing Daughters captured something that the entire country and maybe the world was fascinated by, you know, the Flapper, the Charleston. When that happened and it was a success, MGM said, well, let's give Joan Crawford more movies, you know, we'll give her more chances.
And she became a big favorite as kind of the embodiment of the new modern girl.
After Joan did Our Dancing Daughters, MGM gave her a long-term contract and increased her salary considerably.
She was paired with top MGM actors, and yet she was given big roles. She was the girl who wanted more out of life. She had zest.
I think the first lure was vulnerability. I mean, she had those huge eyes like Betty did, but she was always playing vulnerable, like she was able to be duped, and she was able to be a victim, which she later brought about in some of the later films to great impact.
I'm a chance of a lifetime, Janie. You better take me up.
Bette Davis came from the theater.
Suppose you've always loved the theater.
Betty was a wonderful success in an early show called Broken Dishes in New York.
She made some sort of success in that, and it was based on that she came to Hollywood.
Critics said she was made of lightning, and they were referring to this fantastic energy. And she was very proud of that energy that she had, which allowed her to go on and do the incredible things that she did.
Now, Bette Davis, of course, had been on the stage earlier, and she had a lot of drive right from the beginning.
When the lights go out and that curtain goes up, oh, Don, that's being alive. I love you for bringing me back to life.
And then she went to Universal.
Every time I think about it, I get butterflies in my stomach.
A lot of people would say, well, she was a lovely-looking woman or very attractive, but you wouldn't classify her as a classic beauty by any manner of means. So this bothered her.
Davis struggled very much when she first came to Hollywood as being thought of as drab and unglamorous.
They found her very odd-looking, especially those eyeballs. They commented on those prominent eyeballs.
Don't stand there with your eyes bulging out like that.
And they really didn't know what to do.
Rather cruel, aren't you?
George Arliss, who was a major figure on the screen at Warner Brothers and had been for several years, had seen her in a picture, and he decided that she would be right for his next vehicle, the man who would play God.
He took her under his wing and encouraged her. It was a bit of a mentor.
He's put his faith in me, and I won't be a quitter.
George Arliss was the man Betty said played God to her. He was a wonderful actor of his time, and Betty was about to be dismissed, released. Her contract wasn't picked up, and she was on her way packing her clothes with her mother, and everything was over when George Arliss called her on the phone, and she was ever grateful.
You'll always be my idol.
I shall always be your friend.
And this led to a contract. And they put you in everything. But it was the studio's option, not the player.
MGM began to tailor roles for Joan Crawford right after the huge success of Our Dancing Daughters. When Joan married Douglas Fairbanks Jr., she definitely felt like she was marrying into Hollywood royalty. Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks were Hollywood royalty, about as royal as you could get. Mary never approved of Joan, and the marriage didn't last very long.
She learned a great deal. I think she later said that that's where she learned, which fork to use. And she became, the most pretentious great lady of them all. And much later, she laughed about it herself.
Did you mean that as an insult?
One of the fascinating things about Joan Crawford is how she changed her look over the years. And when she arrived in Hollywood, not unlike Greta Garbo, she was sort of unformed. She didn't have great teeth. She didn't have her signature eyebrows or her signature mouth. And at some point in the 30s, she started changing the look, and the eyebrows were getting bigger, and the mouth was getting wider. It's very possible that someone like Adrian was telling her, you need to get a look.
For 2 weeks, I'm a lady.
So she started growing not just the eyebrows and the lips, but also the shoulder pads, and it became iconic. It became a trademark for her. And after Mildred Pierce, Joan Crawford was really a brand name that she was selling like Pepsi. As Maria Callas said, you got to have a look, and she got one, and she stuck with it.
The same thing with Bette Davis. She already had the big eyes. She didn't need to do anything about her eyebrows, and she said on the stage that had been a huge asset, the big expressive eyes. And therefore, Bette Davis painted on the big lips to not make the eyes look so huge when she was on screen where everything is magnified. Now, Joan Crawford may or may not have been copying Betty's look to some degree with the big lips.
Betty didn't care what she looked like in a film. What she looked like depended upon the character.
She was a character actress. And to me, a character actress is what an actress is. But that was not really true for most actresses then, and is not really true for most actresses now.
Jack Warner really didn't know how to market women.
I don't care.
Warner Brothers was known for dramatic films, for gangster and real-life, almost documentary-style films. But Jack Warner kept ignoring her. He just saw women for what he saw, for their face and their figure.
Warner's never, before Bette Davis, never really had a top female star that was groomed by them.
So it was very hard for a woman to get movies with a strong female role.
You're a pretty smart girl.
So they tell me.
She really took the bull by the horns, and she was fighting for her own parts and, in essence, marketing herself.
She was not going to be the quiet little docile lady in the background saying, whatever you say, boss.
I made you rich. I put those swell clothes on your back. Now just because you got your neck washed, you think you're a gentleman.
Joan was being marketed by MGM. She was being marketed by their publicity machine. By the time that Bette Davis made her first film, Joan was already a firmly established star at MGM, having appeared in films with Clark Gable and, their up-and-coming stars. So she was definitely way ahead of Bette as far as the stardom stakes went. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable made a number of pictures together. They were considered very good box office when they paired them together. Probably the most famous of their teamings, probably their biggest audience pleaser, was Dancing Lady, which introduced a young Fred Astaire, and is one of the films that's associated with Joan dancing. But they have real chemistry in the film, and it's fun to see them play together.
Oh, it's you.
Grand Hotel really showed everybody in one of the first all-star films that was ever made in Hollywood, narrative films, that they were putting her on the same level with the Barrymores and Wallace Beery and Greta Garbo. She was getting equal billing to all of these top-flight stars, so it was really attention. Joan Crawford has come into her own here. She is as big a star as these people are.
Yes, I'm a little stenographer.
That's fascinating. I don't suppose you'd take some dictation from me sometime, would you?
It became a very popular formula for Joan Crawford. Girl from the wrong side of the tracks, from the sticks, makes good, becomes a prominent showgirl, shop girl, mannequin, you name it, something in the working girl's reach.
And I've been through the mill already. Why, I've worked in cheap vaudeville, one-night stands, honky-tonk.
So that was how she really attracted a mass audience, because the audience related to her.
What's very interesting about Crawford is that she was able to adapt her image according to the current fashion, and she seemed to have a real gift for knowing when one period was ending and when to reinvent herself.
I'm going to start doing. I'm going up where it's art.
Betty was given, at the beginning, a lot of ingenues, but then when Betty started fighting and started getting the decent roles, they were all over the map. Betty Davis desperately wanted to do Somerset Maughams of Human Bondage, which would have meant a loan out to RKO.
That sort of thing doesn't mean anything to you.